Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses. Those cruel words would haunt Officer Martinez for the rest of his life. Judge Kesha Williams walked toward the courthouse that morning dressed in her normal clothes, holding a briefcase with her case files. Before she could enter, Officer Martinez stopped her. "Another ghetto rat trying to sneak in," he sneered. He slapped her so hard that her head turned to the side. Her briefcase fell and her papers scattered across the courthouse steps. Then he grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the wall. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages," he repeated, twisting her arms and locking handcuffs on her wrists. Other officers gathered around, laughing and recording on their phones. Kesha's jaw hurt, but her eyes stayed fixed on the bronze sign above the entrance. The Honorable Judge K. Williams. She was just a few steps away from her own courtroom, now being beaten by the same system she had served for years. Inside the courthouse, Officer Martinez adjusted his uniform and prepared his story. He had done this many times before: twist the truth, make himself look like the hero, and let the system believe him. Cops were always trusted over people like her. "Your Honor," Martinez began confidently, "I was doing a routine security check when I found a suspicious woman trying to enter the courthouse." He pointed to Kesha, now sitting in handcuffs with a bruise forming on her cheek. "The defendant was behaving strangely," he continued. "She refused to show ID and became aggressive." Judge Harrison, an older man with a serious face, nodded. "And what did you see exactly, officer?" "She was dressed inappropriately and carried what looked like stolen legal papers," Martinez said. His voice grew stronger as he made up more lies. "When I tried to question her, she shouted at me and made threats." In the audience, two other officers, Rodriguez and Thompson, exchanged tired looks. They had heard Martinez give this same fake story many times before. Different person, same script. She kept claiming she was someone important. Martinez said mockingly, "People like her always pretend to be judges or lawyers to avoid punishment." "I've seen it all before." Judge Harrison leaned forward. "Did she resist arrest?" "Absolutely," Martinez lied smoothly. "She fought back, so I had to use minimal force for safety." Only his trembling hand showed the truth. He was nervous. The court stenographer typed every word, recording each lie forever. In the back, a young law clerk frowned, feeling something was not right. "Officer Rodriguez," the prosecutor called. "Can you confirm this testimony?" Rodriguez stood up. "Yes, ma'am. I saw the whole thing." The defendant was clearly avoiding security checks. Officer Martinez acted very professionally. "And about the assault?" the judge asked. "I only used the force needed to stop her," Martinez answered quickly. "Any injury she has came from her resisting arrest." He pulled out his phone and showed a video that conveniently started halfway through the incident. "My body cam wasn't working this morning," he added smoothly. "How convenient," Kesha murmured quietly. "I'm sorry?" the judge asked. "Nothing, Your Honor," she replied calmly, hiding her anger behind a polite smile. Martinez continued proudly. "This is another example of people pretending to be victims after getting caught breaking the law. She was trespassing and carrying suspicious papers. When confronted, she cried discrimination." The prosecutor, Sandra Walsh, nodded in agreement. "Officer Martinez, have you seen similar behavior before?" "Many times," he said firmly. "Certain people think they're above the law. They use race as an excuse to cover their crimes. It's unfair to real victims of racism." Several people in the courtroom nodded. They had seen similar stories on TV, so they believed him without question. "The defendant claimed she was coming to work," Martinez said, using air quotes, "but she had no ID, no proof of employment, and no reason to be in a restricted area." Officer Thompson added, "Your Honor, she also had confidential legal papers. We suspect fraud or identity theft." "Fraud?" Judge Harrison asked with interest. "Yes, sir," Martinez jumped in quickly. "Those papers had court letterheads and case numbers. Only someone involved in crime could have them. She was probably planning to impersonate court staff." The irony was heavy, but Martinez didn't notice. He kept talking, digging his own grave. "She's just trying to make this about race and police brutality," he said. "It's a trick to hide her crimes." He turned to Kesha with cold eyes. "People like her think they can go anywhere they want and scream discrimination when stopped." "Not in my courthouse." The room went silent. Some people shifted in their seats. Others stared blankly. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, "the state recommends charges for trespassing, resisting arrest, and assaulting an officer. Her civil rights story is just a desperate excuse. Martinez smiled slightly. Everything was going perfectly. Another win, another example of the system protecting him. He continued proudly, I want to add that I showed great restraint. The defendant was unstable, maybe under drugs. A less trained officer might have used more force. Your professionalism is noted, Officer Martinez, Judge Harrison said seriously. Kesha sat silently in her chair, her hands cuffed. Her face was calm, even peaceful, but a small smile appeared on her lips. She was memorizing every lie, every word, every false claim. Because soon, those same lies would destroy Officer Martinez completely. He had no idea that he was standing in front of the very judge who had the power to end his career. Anything else to add, officer? Judge Harrison asked. Yes, Your Honor, Martinez said proudly. People must learn that actions have consequences. She learned that today. He didn't realize how true those words were. The state rests its case, the prosecutor announced. The evidence clearly shows her guilt. As Martinez stepped down from the witness stand, he looked at Kesha one last time and winked, thinking he had won. He had no idea that his real punishment was about to begin. It would be the last moment of victory in Officer Martinez's career. The defendant may now give her statement, Judge Harrison said, expecting a quick and meaningless response before the sentencing. Keisha Williams stood up slowly. The handcuffs around her wrists made a faint metallic sound as she moved. Despite her bruise and messy clothes, she stood tall and proud. The room grew quiet as people felt the power in her calm presence. Thank you, Your Honor, she said clearly. Her voice was steady and confident, filling the courtroom. I appreciate the chance to respond to these accusations. Judge Harrison frowned slightly. There was something about her tone, professional, educated, that didn't fit the story he'd been told. First, Kesha continued, I want to correct several false statements made by Officer Martinez. Her eyes slowly moved across the courtroom, meeting the faces of everyone who had believed the lies. According to his report, I was trespassing on government property. That's false. I was walking on a public sidewalk near the main courthouse entrance around 8:47 a.m. She turned toward the judge. Your Honor, I'm sure you know that the Supreme Court ruled that public sidewalks next to government buildings are open to everyone. Citizens have the right to be there. The court stenographer stopped typing for a moment. The prosecutor frowned. This was not what she had expected. Kesha wasn't emotional or scared. She sounded like a lawyer. Next, Kesha said, Officer Martinez claimed I had stolen documents. Let's look at that. She pointed to the table holding her papers. Those documents are real legal materials. Case files, court notes, and letters, all of which I am legally allowed to have. Judge Harrison interrupted. And what exactly is your job, Miss? Kesha smiled slightly. Williams, Dr. Williams, and I'll explain my position in a moment, Your Honor. Martinez felt a cold wave of fear. Something was wrong. If I may continue, Kesha said, her voice smooth and confident. Officer Martinez also said I was shouting and using bad language. I will not discuss my exact words under my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. However, she added firmly, anything I said came after I was attacked without reason or warning. In the back, the young law clerk suddenly looked up. Something about Kesha's voice felt familiar, like she'd heard it from the bench before. Now, about the officer's claim that his body camera stopped working. Kesha continued, her tone turning sharper. Your Honor, this courthouse has high-definition security cameras placed every few feet along the front walkway. All recordings are automatically backed up, even if a body camera fails. The color drained from Martinez's face. He had completely forgotten about the courthouse security system. I request, Kesha said clearly, that all footage from this morning, between 8:45 and 9:05 a.m., be saved and reviewed. This includes courthouse cameras, backup files, and any videos recorded by other officers. The prosecutor jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. The defendant can't demand evidence without a lawyer. Kesha turned and looked straight at her, calm but commanding. Your Honor, defendants representing themselves have the right to present evidence under the Sixth Amendment, and the prosecution is required by law to protect any evidence that could prove innocence. The room fell silent. Everyone could feel that the balance of power was shifting. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. Miss Williams, you seem to know a great deal about the law. Do you have legal training? I have some experience with the court system, Your Honor. Kesha said smoothly, her eyes shining with quiet amusement. She walked as much as the handcuffs allowed and pointed to one of her documents. Officer Martinez said I was here without permission. She continued. But this, she held up a paper, is my court schedule for today. It clearly shows I was supposed to appear in this building at 9:00 a.m. The bailiff, a large man named Henderson who had worked there for 12 years, suddenly froze. He was staring at Kesha with growing recognition. Officer Martinez said I claimed to be someone important, Kesha said. That's not true. I never claimed anything. In fact, I tried to show him my ID, which he refused to look at before attacking me. She took a breath. Your Honor, despite the officer's actions, I still have documents that can prove exactly who I am and why I was here today. Judge Harrison's expression changed from control to discomfort. What kind of documents? He asked carefully. Kesha reached into her jacket slowly so no one would panic. My judicial parking pass, issued by this courthouse. My building access card, programmed for my office. And my official identification. The bailiff Henderson stood up quickly, his face pale. He knew exactly who she was. Your Honor, Kesha said quietly, I believe there has been a serious misunderstanding about who Officer Martinez attacked this morning. She lifted a small leather wallet. Even from a distance, the golden seal of the court was clear. Perhaps we should take a short recess, she suggested, her voice full of calm authority. Judge Harrison looked from the ID to her face, then to the bailiff, who was nodding slowly. Court will recess for 15 minutes, he said hoarsely, hitting his gavel. Martinez's stomach dropped. His world was falling apart. He was starting to realize that he had made the worst mistake of his life. During the break, the courthouse buzzed with whispers. In a nearby holding room, Kesha sat calmly as Bailiff Henderson unlocked her cuffs with shaking hands. Judge Williams, he whispered almost in shock. Oh my God, Judge Williams. I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you in plain clothes. It's all right, Henderson, she said softly. You weren't part of this, but I need you to do something for me. Anything, Your Honor, he said quickly. Go to my chambers, Kesha said, her eyes steady. Bring me my black judicial robe, the one with the gold trim. And Henderson, she added, her tone firm but calm. Bring my gavel, too, the engraved one from my swearing-in ceremony. Henderson nodded and rushed out. Kesha closed her eyes and took a deep, steady breath. She centered herself, the way she had learned to do over 23 years as a judge. That morning, she had been Judge Kesha Williams, respected, fair, and fearless. Now, after being humiliated by her own system, she was ready to remind them all what real justice looked like. In just 15 minutes, everything had changed. Kesha Williams had gone from a respected judge to a handcuffed defendant, accused of crimes she didn't commit. But now, it was time to take back what was hers. Her phone, which had been taken during her arrest, buzzed as soon as it was returned. Dozens of missed calls and messages filled the screen. Her clerk, Janet Morrison, had sent frantic texts. Judge Williams, where are you? The Peterson hearing starts in 30 minutes. Your Honor, the attorneys are waiting. There are rumors something happened. Please call me. Kesha quickly typed back. Tell the Peterson attorneys we'll reschedule. Something more important has come up. Clear my afternoon calendar. Then she scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. Chief Judge Margaret Carter. The head of the entire district. Margaret. It's Kesha, she said as the call connected. Kesha! Thank God. We heard something happened. Are you all right? I've been better, Kesha said calmly. Margaret, I need you to do something for me. And I need you to do it without asking questions. Of course. Whatever you need. I need you to contact courthouse security, Kesha said firmly, and tell them to preserve and copy all surveillance footage from this morning, between 8:45 and 9:15 a.m., every camera, every angle, and make sure multiple copies are saved in different locations. There was a pause on the line. Kesha, what exactly happened this morning? Kesha's voice stayed calm, but there was fire behind it. A police officer named Martinez just testified for an hour, saying he arrested a dangerous criminal trespassing at the courthouse. The dangerous criminal was me, Margaret. On the other end of the line, there was silence. Then a shocked whisper. Jesus Christ, Kesha. What do you need? Should I call the FBI? The Attorney General. Not yet, Kesha said. Right now, I need those recordings secured. Then I want every case Officer Martinez has testified in over the past 5 years reviewed. Every single one. You've got it, Margaret replied quickly. But Kesha, you can't handle this case yourself. It's a conflict of interest. Margaret, Kesha interrupted softly. In about 10 minutes, I'm going to walk back into that courtroom wearing my judicial robes. Officer Martinez is going to learn exactly who he attacked and who has the power to make sure he faces justice. At that moment, Bailiff Henderson returned, carrying a black garment bag and a small wooden box. Your robes, Your Honor, and your gavel. Keisha stood and unzipped the bag. Inside were her judicial robes, the same ones she'd worn for over 20 years. She slipped them on slowly, feeling the familiar weight of authority settle over her shoulders. Every fold of fabric reminded her of her duty and her power. She opened the wooden box and lifted out her ceremonial lagavel. It was smooth and heavy, engraved with the words, "Justice is blind, but she sees all." "Henderson," she said, adjusting her robes. "When we go back in, I want you to announce me properly." "Yes, Your Honor." "How would you like to be announced?" Kesha stood tall, the bruise on her cheek visible, but now it looked more like a badge of courage. The Honorable Judge Kesha Williams, presiding. She looked at herself in the mirror. That bruise was no longer a mark of shame. It was proof of how far the system had fallen, and how far she would go to restore it. "When court resumes," she said quietly, "Officer Martinez will learn what justice really means." Inside the courtroom, "All rise!" Henderson's voice echoed like thunder. Everyone stood automatically. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Kesha Williams presiding. The words hit the room like lightning. Officer Martinez froze, his casual grin vanishing instantly. Judge Harrison, still sitting in what he now realized was her chair, turned pale. The prosecutor's mouth hung open in shock. The chamber door opened. Kesha Williams entered, wearing her full robes, gold trim shining under the lights. She walked slowly, confidently, carrying her gavel in her right hand. Every eye followed her. The silence was complete. She took her seat behind the bench, her bench, and looked around the room. Every face showed the same thing, disbelief. "Officer Martinez," she said calmly, "you may remain standing." Martinez's face turned from red to white. His knees shook. "Your Honor," Judge Harrison started nervously. Kesha lifted a hand. "Thank you for managing my courtroom during my unexpected delay. You may return to your docket. I'll take it from here." Harrison didn't need to be told twice. He left the room so fast his robes nearly tripped him. Kesha turned back to Martinez. "Officer Martinez," she said evenly, "about 2 hours ago you testified under oath in this courtroom. Do you remember what you said?" I... Martinez couldn't speak. "Let me help you," Kesha said coldly. "You said, and I quote, 'These people always claim to be lawyers, judges, senators, anything to avoid accountability.' Do you remember that?" Martinez nodded weakly. "You also said I was another entitled activist looking for a payday. And perhaps most importantly," she added, leaning forward slightly, "you said, people like me need to learn that actions have consequences. Do you recall that statement?" The courtroom was so silent that everyone could hear the hum of the lights. Kesha reached under her bench and took out a tablet. "Officer Martinez," she said, "I'd like to show you some new evidence that just came to light." She turned the screen toward the courtroom. On it played crystal clear hand security footage from the courthouse entrance, every second of the morning's attack. "There I am," Kesha said quietly, walking to work. "There you are, Officer Martinez," blocking my path. Everyone watched in horror as the video showed him calling her another ghetto rat. His own voice echoed through the courtroom. Then came the moment no one could deny. The slap, the diagram of the handcuffs, and finally, his cruel words. "Filthy animals like you belong in cages, not courthouses." Gasps filled the room. Several people in the gallery stood and walked out in disgust. Kesha paused the video. "Officer Martinez," she asked softly, "do you see any aggression from me? Any threat? Any profanity?" Martinez couldn't answer. "Now," Kesha said, her voice turning sharp, "you also claimed your body cam malfunctioned." She swiped to another file. "This," she said, "is backup footage automatically uploaded to the county's cloud every 60 seconds, a system you seem to have forgotten." The next video began to play. This time, it wasn't just bad, it was devastating. The courtroom fell into dead silence as the next video began. "This," Kesha said, is the full unedited version. Martinez's voice filled the speakers, dripping with arrogance. Look at this uppity woman, thinking she can just walk into my courthouse. People like her need to learn their place. Time to teach another lesson. Gasps spread across the room. The prosecutor, Sandra Walsh, started frantically gathering her papers, desperate to distance herself from the disaster unfolding before her. But Judge Kesha Williams wasn't finished. Officer Rodriguez. Officer Thompson, she called out clearly. You both testified under oath that Officer Martinez handled the situation with professionalism. Would you like to change your statements now? The two officers were already inching toward the exit, faces pale. And here, Kesha continued, advancing the footage, we can see the exact moment Officer Martinez committed felony assault against a federal judge. The words hit like a hammer. Martinez's knees buckled. He gripped the prosecutor's table just to stay on his feet. But wait, Kesha said, her voice calm but cutting. There's more. She opened another file on her tablet. This is audio from Officer Thompson's body cam, which, unlike yours, was working perfectly this morning. A new voice played through the speakers, Thompson talking to Rodriguez while Martinez attacked Kesha. Dude's really going off on this one. Think she's actually somebody important, like she keeps saying? Rodriguez laughed. Nah, man. Look at her. Martinez knows what he's doing. Probably just another welfare queen trying to scam the system. The officer's laughter echoed in the room as everyone watched in disgust. By now, even the last few spectators in the gallery were glaring at Martinez with open hatred. Kesha set down her tablet. Her tone softened, but her words carried the full weight of truth. Officer Martinez, she said, you asked me earlier if I had any employment verification. She gestured around the courtroom, to the large judicial seal behind her, to the nameplate on her bench, and to the framed portrait of her hanging proudly in the courthouse lobby. I've been the presiding judge of this courthouse for 23 years. Every case you've testified in, every warrant you've requested, every search you've conducted, all under my authority. Martinez's lips trembled. His voice came out as a whisper. Your Honor, I didn't know. Kesha's eyes locked on him. You didn't know, she repeated slowly, because you didn't bother to look. You saw a black woman and made assumptions. You saw someone you thought was powerless, and you chose to abuse your power. She paused, then leaned forward slightly. But there's something else you didn't know. Officer Martinez. The entire courtroom went still. For the past 6 months, Kesha continued, I've been working with the FBI's Civil Rights Division, investigating patterns of misconduct and racial bias in this police department. Martinez's face drained of color. This morning wasn't random. Officer Martinez, you've been under investigation, and you just gave us the most perfect piece of evidence we could have hoped for. She lifted her gavel. You said actions have consequences, she said quietly. You were right about that. The gavel came down hard, echoing like thunder. Court recessed. Martinez collapsed into his chair, his career, his reputation, and even his freedom slipping away before his eyes. When court resumed 20 minutes later, the atmosphere had completely changed. Word had spread like wildfire through the courthouse. Lawyers, clerks, and reporters quietly filled the gallery to witness what people were already calling the most shocking courtroom reversal in history. Martinez now sat in the defendant's chair, his uniform wrinkled, his face pale and empty. His new lawyer, a nervous public defender named Michael Carter, kept throwing worried glances at him. Judge Kesha Williams entered with calm, dignified steps. She took her seat behind the bench, the same bench where she had served for more than 2 decades. But now, everyone looked at her differently. This wasn't just any judge. This was the woman Martinez had beaten, humiliated and underestimated, and she was still standing. Officer Martinez, she began, her voice strong and steady. Before we proceed with your charges, I believe everyone here deserves to understand exactly who you assaulted this morning. She rose from her seat and faced the packed courtroom. My name is Judge Kesha Williams, she said proudly. I have served as presiding judge of this courthouse for 23 years. I was appointed by Governor Richardson in 2001 and confirmed by a unanimous vote of the state Senate. Her voice grew stronger with each sentence. I graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, where I was editor of the Harvard Law Review. Before I became a judge, I served 8 years as a federal prosecutor in the Department of Justice, specializing in cases of police misconduct and civil rights violations. Martinez's lawyer stopped writing. Everyone could see where this was going. During that time, Kesha continued, I prosecuted 47 cases against officers who abused their authority. In 23 years on this bench, I have presided over more than 15,000 cases. I have sentenced hundreds of criminals, from thieves to murderers. She stepped closer to Martinez, who now looked utterly broken. But in all my years of service, she said firmly, I have never seen such a perfect example of everything wrong with modern policing as I saw in you. The courtroom stayed completely still, except for the sound of Martinez's shaky breathing. When you called me a ghetto rat, when you told me I belonged in a cage, when you slammed me against the wall of my own courthouse, you weren't just assaulting a stranger, she said. Kesha returned to her bench and picked up a thick folder. You were assaulting the person who has spent her entire career fighting to hold officers like you accountable. She opened the file. This contains every case. You've testified in over the past 5 years. 43 cases in total. In 28 of those cases, the defendants were people of color. In 26, you were the arresting officer, and in every single one, you used the same words you used with me today. Acting erratically, resisting orders, threatening officer safety. She snapped the folder shut. But here's what you didn't know. Officer Martinez, she said slowly, for the last 6 months, I've been working directly with the FBI, the Attorney General, and the Department of Justice to investigate racial bias and corruption in this police department. The public defender's pen stopped moving. He just stared at his client in disbelief. Your name, Officer Martinez, is already on a federal watch list. Your communications have been monitored. Your arrest records analyzed. And now this morning, you have provided us with the clearest, most undeniable proof of civil rights violations we've ever seen. Judge Williams lifted her gavel again. You assaulted a federal judge performing her duties. You did so out of racial hatred. Words from your own mouth confirm it. And you committed perjury by lying under oath about the attack. She raised the gavel high. This morning you asked me if I knew my place. She said, her voice quiet but commanding. Let me tell you where my place is. She looked around the courtroom, her eyes fierce and unflinching. My place is here, on this bench, ensuring that justice is served. My place is holding people like you accountable when they abuse the power given to them. The gavel came down once more. My place, Officer Martinez, she declared, is making sure that your actions finally have consequences. What you did to me this morning, Judge Williams said firmly, will be the last act of racial violence you ever commit as a police officer. Martinez finally realized the truth. He hadn't just attacked a random woman. He had attacked justice itself. And now justice was about to strike back. Officer Martinez, Judge Williams continued, opening a thick folder. Let's take a look at your impressive career in law enforcement, shall we? Martinez's lawyer leaned close to whisper something, but Martinez sat frozen, unable to move or respond. According to internal affairs records, Judge Williams said, you've had 47 official complaints in your 15-year career. That's more than 3 complaints every year. She held up a document. Let's start with the first one. Complaint number 1, filed in 2009, Mrs. Rosa Delgado, a 63-year-old grandmother, said you insulted her and slammed her face onto her car hood during a traffic stop just because she asked for your badge. The courtroom grew tense and quiet. Your department ruled that her complaint was unsubstantiated, but now we have video proof showing you using the same kind of language and violence. Today, she flipped another page. Complaint number 12, filed in 2012. Jamal Washington, a 17-year-old honor student, said you planted drugs in his backpack after he refused to give information about his brother. The department called that one unsubstantiated, too. Martinez's breathing became heavy and uneven. Complaint number 23, filed in 2016. Dr. Michael Johnson, a respected heart doctor, said you arrested him outside his own home because you didn't believe a black man could live in that neighborhood. He spent 6 hours in jail before his lawyer got him released. Judge Williams looked directly at Martinez. Do you remember what your department said about that one? I don't, Martinez whispered weakly. Unsubstantiated, Judge Williams said sharply. Do you see the pattern now, Officer Martinez? Chief Judge Margaret Carter had quietly entered the courtroom and was sitting in the front row, watching carefully. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Judge Williams continued. I compared your complaint history with your arrest records, and the results are shocking. She placed a large chart on an easel for everyone to see. Over 15 years, you've made 251 arrests. Out of those, 1,089, or 87%, involved people of color. Yet your patrol area is 42% white, 31% Hispanic, and 27% black. She pointed to the chart with a laser pointer. Even worse, your own reports show you used physical force in 63% of arrests involving people of color, but only 12% involving white suspects. The courtroom was silent except for the scratching of reporters' pens. And that's not all, she added. Out of your 1,089 arrests of people of color, 432 cases were dismissed because of lack of evidence, misconduct, or rights violations. That's almost 40%, she turned to Martinez. Do you know what that means, Officer Martinez? It means a clear pattern of criminal behavior. The words cut through the courtroom like a blade. I've also checked the financial impact of your actions, Judge Williams said, lifting another document. Over the past 15 years, this county has paid $2.3 million in settlements and damages because of your conduct. That's more than the entire annual budget of some small towns. Martinez finally spoke, his voice trembling. Your Honor, I was just doing my job. Your job, Judge Williams interrupted sharply. Let me remind you what your oath said when you became an officer. She read from a paper. I solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution, and to perform my duties faithfully and impartially. She lowered the document. Faithfully and impartially, Officer Martinez, not based on race, not based on personal bias. Judge Williams looked out over the entire courtroom. This isn't just about one bad officer. This is about a system that protects men like Martinez. Case after case, complaint after complaint, while taxpayers pay the price. She turned back toward him. But that system failed you today, didn't it, Officer Martinez? Because today, you chose the wrong victim. Today, you attacked someone who could finally expose the truth. Martinez buried his face in his hands. You spent the morning telling this court that people like me need to know our place, Judge Williams said firmly. Well, I think it's time you learned yours. She walked back to her bench and raised her gavel. Your place, Officer Martinez, is right there in the defendant's chair, facing the full consequences of your 15 years of crimes. The gavel came down hard, echoing through the room. The judge stood tall, her black robe flowing like armor of justice. The entire courtroom held its breath as she prepared to deliver a historic verdict. Officer Martinez, she began, her voice deep and powerful. Before I give my judgment, I want everyone here, and everyone who will hear this story, to understand something. She looked around the packed courtroom. It all started with a simple question. What happens when someone with a badge believes they are above the law? What happens when power goes unchecked for years, until that person thinks he can attack a federal judge and get away with it? She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. The answer, Officer Martinez, she said, is standing before you right now. Judge Williams picked up her gavel, engraved with the words, Justice is blind, but she sees all. For 15 years, you've terrorized this community. For 15 years, you've violated the rights of innocent people whose only crime was the color of their skin. For 15 years, you've disrespected the badge you were sworn to honor. Her voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. But your biggest mistake wasn't your brutality. It was believing that the system would always protect you, no matter what you did or who you hurt. Martinez looked up, his eyes red and defeated. This morning, Judge Williams said quietly, when you called me names and slammed me against the wall of my own courthouse, you thought you were showing your power over another victim. She leaned forward. But I was never powerless, Officer Martinez, and neither were the people you abused all these years. The difference is, today, justice finally had a witness. She straightened. Based on the evidence presented, your own words, your own actions, your own body camera, I find you guilty of first-degree assault. A felony, gasps filled the room. I find you guilty of assaulting a judicial officer, a federal felony with a minimum of 5 years in prison. Martinez's lawyer dropped his head into his hands. I find you guilty of violating civil rights under color of law, a federal crime punishable by up to 10 years. Martinez sank even lower in his seat. "And I find you guilty of perjury for lying under oath in this courtroom." Judge Williams let her words echo in the silence. "But Officer Martinez, this case isn't just about you. You're part of a much bigger problem, a system that's been broken for far too long." She turned to address everyone watching. "For years, we've let police officers act without accountability. We've ignored evidence. We've dismissed complaints. We've paid out settlements. We've told victims their voices don't matter." Her voice grew powerful and unwavering. "But that ends today. Because what happened here proves one simple truth. No one is above the law. Not police officers, not prosecutors, not judges, not politicians. No one." Martinez broke down, crying uncontrollably. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't know. I never meant to." Judge Williams looked at him calmly. "Your apology comes 15 years and 47 complaints too late. You're only sorry because you finally got caught by someone who had the power to stop you." She raised her gavel high. "And here's what you must understand. Every single person you ever hurt will finally get justice today." "Over the years," Judge Williams said, "every person you hurt deserved the same justice I'm delivering today. Every grandmother you insulted, every teenager you planted drugs on, every doctor you arrested just for living in the wrong neighborhood, they all deserve to see you held accountable." Her gavel hovered in the air. "Today," she continued, "I'm not just giving justice for myself. I'm giving justice to every person whose complaint was dismissed as unsubstantiated. I'm giving justice to every family who watched their loved ones get beaten while the system looked away." Her voice filled every corner of the courtroom. "Officer Martinez, you told me this morning to know my place. Well, let me tell you what my place is. My place is making sure that bullies like you never again hide behind a badge while destroying innocent lives." The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. "Officer Martinez," Judge Williams declared, "you are hereby sentenced to the maximum penalty allowed by law. You will serve 25 years in federal prison, without the possibility of parole." Martinez collapsed completely, crying uncontrollably. "Furthermore," Judge Williams continued, "I am ordering a full federal investigation into every case you ever handled, every arrest you made, and every complaint filed against you. The victims you silenced for 15 years will finally have their day in court." She set down her gavel and looked at the packed courtroom. "Let this be a message to every police officer, every prosecutor, and every official who thinks they can abuse power without consequence. Justice may be blind, but she sees everything. And sooner or later, she comes for everyone." The courtroom erupted in applause that lasted for 5 minutes. Justice had finally been served. 6 months later. The impact of that historic morning was still being felt across the country. Officer Martinez was serving his 25-year sentence in federal prison, where other inmates already knew about his crimes from the news. His badge, his pension, his freedom, all gone. The man who once terrorized a community now lived in protective custody, finally understanding what it felt like to be powerless. But Martinez's downfall was only the beginning. The federal investigation Judge Williams ordered uncovered a web of corruption reaching deep into the police department's command structure. 12 officers were fired. 4 supervisors were charged with crimes. The entire department was placed under federal oversight. Chief Judge Margaret Carter established new rules requiring automatic federal review of any police misconduct case involving judicial personnel. Body cameras became mandatory for all officers, with secure backup systems that could never malfunction conveniently again. Most importantly, the 432 cases Martinez had ruined were reopened. Dozens of wrongfully convicted people were freed. Hundreds more had their charges dropped or sentences reduced. The county paid out an additional $8.7 million in compensation, money taken directly from the police department's budget. Judge Williams became a national symbol of courage and integrity. She was invited to speak at law schools across the country, telling how one moment of violence revealed years of hidden abuse. Her message was always the same. Justice delayed is justice denied, but justice delivered is justice for all. The courthouse where it all happened was renamed the Justice Williams Federal Courthouse in her honor. A bronze plaque at the entrance reads, "Here, justice finally found its voice." But the biggest change was in the community itself. People who had once been too afraid to report police misconduct began speaking up. Community oversight boards were created. Police training was completely redesigned, with Judge Williams personally developing programs about constitutional rights and unconscious bias. The young law clerk who had witnessed everything that day was so inspired that she chose to specialize in civil rights law. She now works for the ACLU, fighting for justice in courtrooms across the country. Officers Rodriguez and Thompson, the ones who helped Martinez lie, were fired and charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Their recorded laughter, as they watched a federal judge being attacked, became part of a national case study on police corruption. The video of Judge Williams delivering her verdict became the most watched courtroom footage in internet history, seen over 50 million times. Comments flooded in from around the world from people who had suffered similar injustices, finally seeing what real accountability looked like: complete, public, and undeniable. Today, Officer Martinez sits in his prison cell, thinking about the moment he chose to attack a woman because he thought she was powerless. He thought he knew his place in the world. He thought he knew hers, but he was wrong about both, because sometimes justice doesn't just wear a blindfold. Sometimes justice wears judicial robes. Sometimes justice carries a gavel. And sometimes, when the moment is right, justice hits back. Never underestimate the power of standing up to bullies. Share this story. If you believe everyone deserves justice, no matter who they are or what they look like this video. If you believe courage can defeat corruption, and subscribe. Because stories like this happen every day, and everyone deserves to see them. Your story could be next. Truth always finds its voice.